on other F words. I'm your host, Zach Lyons. Got Easton Freeze filling in for Stoney, who will be back next week because Stoney said, screw this team. I'm not going to cover the last two games and preview the last two games. I'm going to go to Georgia, fly some drones, create some mayhem. Or not Georgia, Jersey.
I was about to say, I knew he was flying drones in Jersey. Now he's going to Georgia to fly them?
I was thinking Georgia versus Notre Dame.
Right. Well, I always appreciate when, at the end of a rough season, the real grinders and the fake grinders separate themselves, the wheat from the chaff. So.
For sure. I mean, that's obviously what is happening in this situation.
Making fun of Stoney, the sickest amongst us. Yeah, so he knows I can poke fun at him.
I mean, he's been looking at tape this whole trip. I think every day he talks about a new prospect that he is watching. And earlier, he's like, oh, I kind of think I like Brew McCoy. Like, nobody likes Brew McCoy.
Every text is either
Tennessee Volunteer fans.
Every text is either about a prospect he's watching or an update from his wife saying that he can no longer text us about the prospects he's watching.
Right. Well, that is what it is. But, he's not here in the muck and the mire. So,
right.
Of course, this is our fourth episode in Studio C, Cumulus Media Studios, Studio C. If you're interested, reach out to 104.5 The Zone because this is a rentable space.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
Yeah. Yes, this is rentable.
I was going to ask if anybody else is using this.
I have no clue. I know
it's a really nice space for, podcasting.
I mean, these 4K cameras,
studio work.
Wireless microphones, microphone packs, nice couches. Me and Stoney are starting to line up a little maybe guest list for the third couch. There's a third casting couch over here.
I like that.
So I
some
think
obscure prospects that you're gonna fly in from Tulane and
maybe
right.
we'll see if we can get some prospects.
Georgia State guys up here, right?
But listen, this place could be rented. I know we were the first ones to use it. We may be the only ones still using it.
Works well. I recommend it.
We got Jackson behind the glass. Jackson, how you doing?
What's up, boys? Thrilled to be back. How was y'all's New Year's?
It was good. How was yours?
Solid. I was asleep by 10:30, I think.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Now, Easton, for those that don't know, you have a child.
I do.
And recently you put out a tweet talking about the beta, the next generation of kids being born. So from here on in, any kid being born till the next generation is labeled beta.
Right.
They're the beta generation.
Which is just...
But you said...
a nightmare.
It's a nightmare for your kids.
For my future kids.
Your future kids. I mean, how many kids are you going to be popping out?
If it was up to my wife, probably... when we first started dating, I was like, let's do 2 guy. And she was let's do 6 kind of girl.
Oh, my gosh.
She loves...
That's when I would break up.
Right. I figured I could
Deal
talk
breaker.
her down. If I had to guess, we'll probably end up with 3 kids.
Oh my gosh!
Probably.
That's
we'll see.
3 too many.
I've always said 2 kid with a 3rd kid option is what I signed up for.
So you basically a team option,
right? We'll get to 2 and see how it goes.
Easton Freeze swim team option.
Once you have to go from zone to man coverage, 1 to 2 kids, I hear it's a big deal. So we'll see how the man coverage works, and if we want to go back to zone with a 3rd.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Tennessee Titans, and I want to start off with: do you think the age of transparency with Brian Callahan is coming to an end after this season?
Oh, interesting.
Because if you've noticed these last few weeks, because he's put himself out on a limb a lot, at the pressers, it's getting more and more coach speaking. And is that because the NFL machine has beaten him down and this season has stripped away all of his excitement and energy? Or is it that he's kind of learning that, not you in particular, but you guys,
right?
The local media, us guys, the local media, tend to read too much into some of the stuff he says and then use it as ammo and backlash towards him. And so, I kind of think, we probably have seen the last of the full-on age of transparency of Brian Callahan.
That is a really interesting thought that I haven't really put any mental power towards.
Ramon brought it up today on 3HL when I was driving in.
Right. And it's one of those things that the second you said it, I didn't question it because it all lines up with my lived experience the past month or so.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of both. Both being him being beaten down maybe, but really learning what it's like to do so much media, and also the circumstances of where this team is at and some of the more difficult things that are coming down the pike. I think it's a little bit of both. And we started out with things as rosy as they possibly could be in the spring with him, and in the spring and the summer. And so it was really easy to be as open as possible and to get as much goodwill with the media as possible and brand yourself a good guy and all these things. And I don't think that's, phony, by the way. I think that's his natural state. I talked to him a little bit at some point in the middle of the season, talking to him just about like what his experience has been as a coach. And one of the things that he brought up was just how much more front-facing you are as a head coach versus being a coordinator. And obviously you know that going in, but you don't really know it until you've gone from, because coordinators they're doing one media availability a week for 10 minutes, depending on the news of the day, sometimes less. And then when you're a head coach, you're doing, and I don't know exactly his schedule, but you're doing with us, the main scrum, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You are doing production meetings with the television crew on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You are doing in-house media, podcasts, and the Brian Callahan show for local syndication. And so you're doing so much media stuff, and you're talking about the team all the time. And
you don't have a GM to help, take some of the press conference questions.
Right. And in this particular circumstance, you are the front man for $1 billion organization. So it's a lot of pressure. So I think that's part of it, is definitely him learning. But I would say I wouldn't be, to your ultimate point there at the end, saying that is this the end? I don't think it's the end, because I think who he is somebody that is inclined to be open and honest and forego some of the nonsense BS that a lot of coaches get into. He's willing to deal with talking about things out loud, but down the stretch here, like, you've got some things you just can't talk about that are probably on his mind, like who he plans on having around after this month, both on his staff and on the team. Not to say that they're actively trying to lose games, but when you are a bad team, there does come some end of season roster management that is involving, okay, who are your star cornerstone pieces? Do you want to risk them getting any further beaten up going into the offseason? And then who are some guys that maybe this is an opportunity for them preseason style to get some more action? And also, in rare circumstances like they're in this week, how do we find a way to lose this game? And obviously he can't say that. And I'm not saying I know that he's thinking that, but like, he's not an idiot. The coaches aren't idiots. The front office knows what's up. I'm sure Amy Adams-Strunk knows what's up. I've been talking about it all week long on AtoZSports.com. They have to lose this game. Everybody knows it. And so that's why this week in particular, I felt like this week is probably the peak of him bottling up. His press conferences this week have been useless to no discredit to no fault of his own, in my opinion, because this is the week where I really don't think anything that he's dealing with he can responsibly talk about at the podium.
So, I mean, it sounds like you think – I think a better term than tanking is playing to lose.
Yes.
And I heard PK say that earlier this week, and I'm like, okay, that's one I'm going to steal from PK.
Sure.
A lot of stuff I'm not going to steal from PK, but that one I will steal. Give him credit
for
that.
That's good practice.
And to me, I look at it and I think, okay, I want to start with the quarterback decision. And I don't understand why you're floating Will Levis out there, if at all. Because it seems like it's kind of changed, and maybe I'm misconstruing. Or
what do you mean?
Okay, so they're doing the split, right? But it sounds like this rotation in and out is just for practice now. Nick Holtz kind of alluded to that. It was like, well, Brian
I missed the Nick Holtz conference today.
So he said, well, Brian will let you guys know who the starter is. Today's the 50-50 rep day. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe he just means the guy that's starting the game. But that kind of makes me think, like, why does it even matter who's starting the game if you're rotating them in and out?
That's my question as well. It doesn't matter unless you plan on, I don't know, unless you plan on one of them getting, 75% of the snaps and the other getting a little. I don't know. That's a little bit weird, and I wonder if maybe Holtz just kind of said it a funny way. I'd have to go back and listen, but I mean,
because it's a big announcement tomorrow, or there'll be Friday.
Who's starting the game, right?
But the way he just worded it made me think
does it matter though? Does it
Well, it doesn't. I don't think it really matters. So I want to ask you this in the sense of it's not really out of spite, but doesn't Will Levis seem like the guy that's just going to go out there, kind of fucking sling it around and win you a game? And is this going to be the first time that Tennessee Titans fans have booed a touchdown by the Tennessee Titans? Because I asked Blaine that question, and he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, I kind of think that they may boo.
It depends on what the touch. Is this the touchdown to cut the deficit to 2 scores, or is this the touchdown to take the lead in the fourth quarter? Because I mean, there's some weird emotional potential for this game. I don't really know what's up with the whole starting versus non-starting thing. As far as whether or not Levis is the kind of guy to go out there and mess things up. I mean, listen, I've heard this a lot this week, be like, oh, yeah, Will Levis, totally the type of guy to go out there and spitefully win a game.
But I said I don't think he would spitefully do it.
I know you don't, but I have heard that a lot this week.
I kind of think, like, he's that guy that has that luck because we've seen the bad luck, and he's obviously not trying to lose the game.
Yes.
And obviously, this is going to be the game where it's like he throws for 300. It's going to be the Atlanta Falcons game.
Right. And maybe that's why the coaching staff is being kind of weird about who's starting, because they are worried about him going out there. Because everybody knows he has a higher ceiling than Rudolph. Right. And if he is playing well, he can win you a game. He's physically capable of doing it. He has done it in his NFL career. So I don't know. I certainly think that people are telling on themselves this week when they say, oh, he's totally the kind of guy to go out there and spitefully win a game. You don't know Will Levis.
Well, he also wants to like spitefully win every game in that case. You get what I'm saying? He wants to go out and win every game he plays. You get what I'm saying?
Yes, yeah.
So it's not going to be out of spite. It's going to be out of sheer dumb luck that he turns into a quarterback that we haven't seen the prior, 10 starts.
I'm really scared.
Yeah.
I know
that's why you should just start Rudolph.
I know. And I would guess that they are going to do that, but I don't know, man. That's the thing that, and I know in my heart that they know they have to lose. I'm sure they're going to do everything in their power to lose. I hope that they do. But I am still really worried that they're going to find a way to win the game.
Well, then that takes you to the Texans, right? Like, obviously the Philadelphia Eagles are resting everybody.
Right.
They're in a totally different position than the Houston Texans in terms of they've been playing really good football. The Texans have not been playing really good football. I mean, they just scored 2 points out of a whole 60 minutes against the Baltimore Ravens just last time we saw them. And obviously, I look at it and I think the Texans are looking at this from a perspective of we have to have some kind of momentum. So, momentum's a real thing in sports. We have to have a good game. We need to get confidence back. Azeez Al-Shaair is going to be back. We got to get him some gameplay before.
Watch out.
Yeah. Where everybody should be wearing the guardian caps on the Tennessee Titans.
All the DBs that don't wear knee pads usually put the old school, middle school football
just wear an umpire outfit.
I don't know. That might also put you in danger. I don't know.
So I look at it and I'm like, okay, so they're going to be playing.
Yes,
and
thank God.
Hopefully. I mean, for a long time.
They're saying it at least.
Half,
they're saying it, yeah.
Which a half can doom this Tennessee Titans team.
I was about to say, just get up 3 scores and then you guys can chill out.
So I kind of look at it and I go, they're not trying to screw us. Because in terms of trying to screw us, they could be screwing up their own momentum.
Right.
So
they got murdered the last time they were on the field.
And they don't want that. I don't think the Texans...
They're a bad team, so it may not matter for them. But
that's a different discussion. Yeah. But I don't think the Texans are going to, I don't think they're thinking, well, we got to make sure the Tennessee Titans win because we would rather them have the 7th instead of the second round pick.
They're not good enough to be afforded that privilege. Yeah, right. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thinking is...
And this draft class is not good enough to be afford a team that
also
privilege.
Also true. But yeah, that kind of thinking comes along with a level of confidence in your team. I saw, when the Vikings players did that High School Musical celebration where they choreographed it. Did you see this in the end zone? And they had a behind the scenes in the hotel. I had friends texting me like, where do they find time to practice this? I'm like, well, when you're an awesome team, you can do some cocky stuff like this.
Well, also, have they not? You probably haven't. I don't know have you not seen Ted Lasso?
I have to.
Okay,
yeah.
so the night that they were in Holland and they spent the whole night in the lobby trying to decide where they're going to go.
Right.
Okay, well, it's just the same thing, except for they're spending their time doing the.
My point is, when you're a team like the Texans, you're not good enough to like the Bills and the Eagles. They're both going to rest, and they can be kind of screwy with some, with the way that they handle divisional teams playing the Patriots and playing the.
Well, but also like this,
Giants.
If you're the Texans, okay, so it's on your radar. The Tennessee Titans may select Shedeur Sanders, right? If you're truly thinking about that, you're probably like, okay, yeah, take Shedeur Sanders. Go ahead.
I mean, maybe.
Because we talk about this quarterback draft class. You get what I'm saying? Like, I don't think I just don't think this particular Texas team with the way DeMeco Ryan is really involved in this.
No,
he's not that guy to be thinking, oh, well, we got to lose this game to screw them out. Going from the 2nd to 7th, you can still end up with Abdul Carter.
Right.
And your team has no momentum.
Correct.
And you lost to the lowly Titans twice.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. It's kind of the
It's more you got to be worried about your own team.
I was about to say it's the exact same conversation with the Texans in this game as was with Will Levis. Like, I don't think there's any spiteful, intentional actions going on here, but they're just bad enough for it not to matter,
Well, think about it like this, okay? So there's something called the Betrayal Index. Do you know about the Betrayal Index? Mike Sando put it out.
I don't think so.
It's a new stat, I think, this year. He looks at quarterbacks with a minimum of 8 starts right now, and he ranked them by their individual EPA.
Okay.
And he ranks them by their individual EPA only to the people that are on the list.
Right.
And then he takes the defensive EPA and the special teams EPA, adds them to, puts them together, and then puts that rank out. So he has the quarterback rank, the defense, the special teams rank. So it pretty much tells you the difference in the rank is how much they betray you.
I see.
So C.J. Stroud is the 27th best quarterback in EPA. 27th rank. Bad. His defense and special teams is the 4th best. So he is betraying the rest of his team. Will Levis is 2 spots higher in the betrayal index. So he is 32nd in EPA, but his team, the defense and special teams EPA, 15th best.
Right.
So, but that, number is a little bit less. So he's like negative 19, and whereas, negative 20 something for.
Right. I do think it requires some context. Like, Stroud has had a disappointing year personally.
Oh, yeah.
But also, I'm not all that worried about C.J. Stroud as an individual.
No.
That offense and that offensive scheme is betraying the defense. C.J. Stroud all season long has been asked to be perfect on late downs.
Jeremy Fowler and Graziano are already saying that Bobby Slick, you may see his name a couple of times. That's about it for head coaching positions.
I think it's kind of embarrassing for them to even say a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, to go from a hot name in the coaching cycle to updating your LinkedIn in 1 year is tough. But in his case, it is appropriate. He stinks.
Yeah.
He stinks.
So that leads you to Joe Burrow just passed Lamar Jackson in the betrayal index as the the quarterback most betrayed by his defense and special teams.
Right.
For most of the year, it's been Lamar Jackson.
That's shocking, actually.
Yeah, just happened, Joe Burrow.
That's because of how bad that Ravens defense was for the first 6 games of the year.
But it's just also another metric out there where it shows that Will Levis isn't that good. Just
that's
tons
all.
of them.
That's all the metrics.
Just tons of them.
Where are these metrics that show that he is good?
Yeah.
Show me those metrics.
Yeah. Mason Rudolph, I think, was like a couple spots higher, but not many.
This team has largely been falling at the hands of subpar quarterback play.
Okay, so not only subpar quarterback play, but the Pro Bowl rosters came out today.
How exciting.
It's so exciting. But the Tennessee Titans have four alternates. Jeffrey Simmons, defensive lineman.
Fitting.
Safety, Amani Hooker. Running back, Tony Pollard.
Absolutely fitting.
Punter, Ryan Stonehouse. But that is basically the public perception
Mhm.
are that those are the 4 best players on this team at those 4 positions. So let me say that again. Defensive line, which is a pretty premium position now.
Yeah.
But then safety, running back, and punter.
Right. Premium.
So why should Rand Carthon keep his job? Devil's advocate. I'm just, I think he will, but
so
why should he?
sure. I understand the argument for him to not keep his job. The reason why I think that he should is because I think when you go decision by decision of his in the past 2 years, the good decisions far exceed the bad decisions. And I don't think many people are doing that because it takes some legwork and reminding yourself of what he's done. But the biggest knock on him is truly that he has not hit at some of the most premium positions. That's not to say that he's hit at no premium positions, but the things that you think about in terms of quarterback, tackle, which actually he did hit at tackle.
Yeah.
Wide receiver, cornerback. He's made some.
The wide receiver may have gotten Pro Bowl votes at either quarterback.
I was about to say, he did go and get a good receiver, and he has gone and gotten good cornerbacks.
In fact, the NWI was very low. You figured that at least by the memes alone that have been created with him on the list,
right,
from fantasy football places, that he would have at least gotten a good chunk of votes.
You would think. I wish I cared.
Yeah.
The Pro Bowl,
I get you.
But yeah, I was kind of surprised there were 4 alternates at all.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. I do laugh a little bit at some people looking at that result for the Titans and saying, oh man, this team, it's so hard to not even have one Pro Bowler, which true, it is impressive to not have any Pro Bowlers. But then they say, this team is screwed. They say that we're a quarterback away, and look at this. This is proof positive that this team has so many more problems than quarterback. And it is true that quarterback's not the only.
What are you symboling over here? This is not a good symbol to be throwing around as a white man, by the way.
If you're Italian, you can get away with it.
No, that's this. This is the Italian.
Oh, it's all the fingers?
It's all the fingers.
Oh, I see. The thing, what was I saying? God.
Using Pro Bowl as a.
Yeah. The proof positive that you have no Pro Bowlers, this team is far from a quarterback away. And while it's true that they do have many issues that aren't just a quarterback, I know of a team last year that had no Pro Bowlers and got a quarterback and are now awesome, and they're called the Washington Commanders. So just a little note that I know you agree with me on, just about how it's the haves and the have-nots in the league today.
Real quick, Ricky W says, so both quarterbacks under Brian Callahan's system had the highest betrayal ratings. No, they have the lowest. They have the highest. The quarterbacks are the highest at fault. They are 2 of the least betrayed quarterbacks by the special teams unit. C.J. Stroud is the least betrayed by his unit, but he's ranks 27th. You get what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
For the clarification.
Yes.
Right. Is that it's basically essentially the least betrayed quarterbacks are Will Levis, Cooper Rush was down there, C.J. Stroud. Mm-hmm. So they are the least betrayed quarterbacks, but they are also some of the worst in EPA.
Most betraying.
Yeah, they are the betrayers.
Yes.
They are not the betrayed.
They are the betrayers.
There you go.
Absolutely. Yes.
But back to Pro Bowl.
Yeah, just that in the haves and the have-nots in today's league are whether or not you have a suitable quarterback.
Yeah.
And I was talking to somebody today about how you go down the list of the playoff teams this year, and they literally all have quarterbacks. The worst quarterback situation is Pittsburgh, probably. And then you look at the 9 worst teams in the league, and I say 9, it's not an arbitrary number. All the teams that are below that 4 or less win mark, because this year, we have a historically high number of teams at 4 or less wins. Usually at this point, it's 3 or 4, and there are 9 of them.
Yeah.
What did they do to the middle class of this NFL? They hollowed it right out. They all have quarterback issues. Either a hurt quarterback that wasn't around, or they probably or definitely need a quarterback. So just because your team isn't great does not mean hitting on a quarterback won't raise the floor of your team astonishingly. And it's not necessarily going to go from what the Commanders were in 2023 to what they've been in 2024. Like, that's a pretty ideal outcome, I would say. But you can get close to that. You can go from a Titans 3-win team to a Titans 7 or 8-win team without really changing anything else but the quarterback and just having good quarterback play. Like, that's possible.
Yeah.
And they're also not going to change nothing over the season. They're going to change a lot of things.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting.
So speaking of, we both preach stability.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of went through all 32 teams.
I saw that you
their
did
current
this.
head coach and GM situations. And I wanted to see how many were hired this current pairing for every 32 teams. Were the head coach and GM hired at the same time? Was the head coach there and then first, and then was the GM there first? Okay. So, and I wanted to see what the percentage of the teams were and what kind of has looked like the average win-loss rate.
Mm-hmm.
So when the quarterback and GM has been hired on the same timeline, so the same year, they have a 0.464 win percentage.
Okay.
So below average.
Right.
43.75% of the NFL has done that,
Okay.
and they have a losing record. The head coach first is a 0.673 win percentage, and there's only 9.38% of the teams. So that is Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
Andy Reid was there before Brett Veach got there. Then it was John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta took over for Ozzie Newsome. And then it was Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan, who just got hired a couple seasons ago. So obviously 3 good, establishments.
It's going to be a tough one
that's
for
a
you.
tough
there.
one right there.
Yeah.
But when the GM has been hired first,
Okay.
which is 46.88% of the league, which is in this case Tennessee Titans, those have ended up being 0.507. So win percentage. So that is the second best win percentage and a better win percentage than if they were hired on the same timeline.
Mm-hmm.
So we have said that stability between usually leads to success, and I think this kind of shows it because there's many different instances and different timelines as far as how long they've been together that the GM first usually works out better regardless of if they pick the last coach and pick the second coach or whatever. That's not to say that that's 100% sure going to happen here, but this is a moment to preach stability, even if it's just, the GM maybe hired the head coach a year later.
So just to be clear, the instances when teams aren't married in terms of timeline, the GM being there before the head coach is a worse situation than if the coach is there before the GM.
Right, but that's also the 3
because
teams.
of 3, right.
But it's better than the same timeline. So when you hire them at the same time.
Both are better than the same timeline?
Yes. Same timeline is the worst.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the same timeline is what, half the league?
Yeah, less than there's more teams that hired the GM first and kept the GM on to hire the new head coach.
It feels noisy, doesn't it? I don't know. Do you put much stock into that?
Well, I think it kind of goes into the whole fact of like when you start looking at teams that kept, people past a certain date, it usually leads to success.
Right.
And so I think that's what it breeds into because when you're talking about, there are teams that are like the 49ers brought them both at the same time. But if you look at a team like, let's go to, Cincinnati, had Duke Tobin already there. Houston, Nick Caserio was there through 2 coaching changes and then had hired D'Amico Ryans. So there is some kind of stability to be given. So here's the thing I want to ask for you.
Okay.
Let's say they decide that the sacrificial lamb, the scapegoat, is Rand Carthon. Chad Brinker just takes on all of his duties.
Right.
How are you feeling about that situation?
I've been thinking about that this week because the real possibility is kind of been put on the radar the past week or so.
Yeah.
I was very cold to it at first because I do just my gut reaction was if you're going to fire one of them, fire them all. Mm-hmm. And by them all, I mean all 3 of them. But I don't know. I think it was you in a conversation earlier this week that made an interesting point. It really just reminded me of the point that we were making when they first came down with this power structure in, when was it, January?
Yeah.
When Amy Adams Strunk came out and said, here's how it's going to work, division of labor between Rand Carthon, who got promoted and demoted at the same time, and Chad Brinker, and how Rand Carthon's going to be only doing football operations and Chad Brinker's going to be everything else. But also, Chad Brinker is simultaneously handling, like,
analytics and he scouts on his own time.
Right. Does scouting on his own time, analytics that is directly used by the football operation. And he's handling, like, the Chick-fil-A catering and the security officer outside. So he's kind of, it sounds like he's kind of doing more normal GM stuff than Rand Carthon is.
But he's essentially doing stuff like Parag Marathi.
Yes.
And Chad Brinker is.
Yeah.
And Rand Carthon is, but there are GM stuff that he's doing, and he was assistant GM last year, which probably still correlated over. He comes from Green Bay. There's another high-ranking official inside Titan staff that's also from Green Bay named Alfonso Highsmith.
Does that make him more or less likely to come into power and target Aaron Rodgers? Being from Green Bay?
That's what worries me.
Well, hang on.
But I don't think that's the case.
There's an argument both ways.
Yeah, well, there's
the Green Bay people could be burned on Aaron. Like, I'm done.
Yeah. I look at it like this, I don't think Rand Carthon should be fired. But the reporting coming out surrounding this isn't as strong as Brian Callahan is for sure coming back. But all intent and purposes, you might as well just buckle up for a Brian Callahan year 2.
Yes.
That's not the case for either Brinker or Rand Carthon.
On him this week.
That's not the case for Brinker and Rand Carthon at this point in time. Nobody wants to come out and say that.
But that's all been in the last week, right? I mean, we weren't really talking about them. Certainly not singling them out until
we weren't. I mean, I think and I'm still not necessarily saying that either of them should be fired because people will listen to this and be like, "Oh, you said there's Steve Lamb and Dixie N who come on the YouTube chat. You guys said to fire Rand Carthon." I was like, I've never said anything of the sort.
Yeah, what?
I've always said that if you fire one, fire both.
Right.
But I am all for stability. I'm not going to be calling for anybody's job. But I do see a scenario where because of this power structure, right? So this power structure that they put out really insulated both of them.
Yes.
To where there could be who can Amy fire if she needed to fire someone, and do they have enough reason to fire her?
Right. It is uniquely set up to be able to fire one and not both.
Yeah.
And in a lot of upper executive power structures in a lot of business, the jobs are you're inherently tied to one another, right? That's not the case here.
Right.
Which was kind of weird at the time.
He's out from under the shadow, right? Like, because he was assistant GM.
Right.
Well, now he's not assistant to anything.
So that all it does is make me wonder how much of that was intentional foresight and how much of it is just kind of the way that it worked. Like, do you think that was really on her or anybody's mind when they set it up that way?
It's hard for me to believe that.
Me too.
Because, I mean, this is...
Frankly, I think
that's really an insult to how this whole operation is run. I can't give him the benefit of the doubt.
I think it's giving him way too much credit.
Yeah. Foresight? Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So, question for you. I mean, it is Thursday. We got Black Monday coming up. Now is as good a time as any to shoot your shot. What do you think? What do you think happens if you had to guess today? Where you at?
Well, this season has been totally disappointing for me at every step of the way.
For sure.
Same with Alabama's season. So I just expect more disappointment in 202025. It's not going to end in 2024. So I expect Rand Carthon to be fired.
Okay. So
I don't want it. I don't like it. And I'm not really comfortable. I wouldn't put like even $10 on it.
Right.
But I'm thinking, man, the Tennessee Titans really have shown that they hate me over almost every step of the way this year. Why stop now that the clock has turned to 2025? The calendar is flipped. Why stop?
So you think Rand gone, Brinker elevated, Callahan back? Because
that solves a couple of different things. You're technically not forcing a head coach onto a GM.
Right.
You do still technically have some form of stability. But I think like I said here last week, if you're going to be one of those people that blames Carthon for Snead, that blame goes to Brian Callahan and Chad Brinker.
Yes.
Because Brian Callahan desperately wanted L'Jarius Snead here. Chad Brinker facilitated the medicals, facilitated the trade. Rand Carthon said, I leaned, and I want to go back to this. Okay, so first off, he said, I leaned on Chad Brinker's relationship with Kansas City to get this done. I lean on my relationships. He's done a lot of leaning. Is that on purpose? Because then he can say, well, I leaned on Bill Callahan. He told me NPF was the guy, that he could do something with NPF. I leaned on Brian Callahan. He told me that Will Levitt, he could do something with Levitt. I leaned on Tyke Tolbert because he wanted Jaquan Jackson. I leaned on Chad Brinker because he wanted L'Jarius Snead, and so did Brian Callahan. I don't know. He's left him a lot of outs.
So you're wondering if it's intentional by Rand doing all this leaning.
Again, kind of like with that's probably giving him too much credit.
Right. I think this is different than that. But my thing is, if that's intentional, it's really bad game theory, because all it does is make you seem like you don't do anything around here. Like, you know what I mean? Because
maybe that also makes it easier for him to get fired.
Yeah, but obviously you're saying his point would be his point would be, what, I can't be held responsible for anything. But as the GM of a team, if you can't be held responsible for anything, you're going to get none of the love for when things are right, and you're still the GM, so you're going to get hate for when things are wrong.
Rand Carthon to make a bad political move like that.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I think to answer my own question, I think that he's back. I think I got to pause.
Back. Ricky W. I've never had a time, because I don't think you've said this on the podcast yet, but Ricky W., who's on Twitter, why do you want Nick Holtz fired? What has he done that you think that he deserves to get fired? He's a big proponent. Like, okay, Callahan and Colt, I see. He calls for Callahan and Colt a lot.
Okay, fine.
I mean, I'm not going to sit there, but what's the deal with Nick Holtz?
We knew. I mean, I'm pretty sure I tweeted it.
I just have to know.
I know. I'm pretty sure I tweeted it when we first talked to Holtz. And I was like, I can't wait for things to go bad on offense and for people to yell for Holtz to be fired. Because talk about a guy set up to be this scapegoat. This is if the person whose head you most desperately want on a pike is Nick Holtz, you are Brick Tamlin in Anchorman when they're, I think it's in the fight scenes and everybody's screaming at each other, and then Brick just goes, loud noises, because he wants to be involved, but he's not actually impacting anything. This is the equivalent of Brick Tamlin loud noises if you're calling for him to be fired, because it doesn't. You just want to see blood. Like, you don't actually have. You're not affecting any agenda. You're an agent of chaos.
Because we don't really know what part of the offense he actually does.
No, we don't. We don't. So that's really silly. Who'd you say was in the chat?
Ricky W. But this is also week 18. So, like, you've done a piss poor job trying to figure out what Nick Holtz does on offense as you. Yeah, you, Easton.
Fair. I mean, well, no, but like, fair. The answer is he does a little bit of everything. Like, that's the real answer. Is like, I can't point to one area that he's most impactful with. It's game planning.
Okay, so
that's what it is.
Okay, so he says that they're no experience and soft. The players don't respect Nick Holtz. He also says that about Colt and Brian.
How do you know that?
But it wasn't Nick Holtz the one that was like screaming at him, at dropping F-bombs at practice because they were throwing interceptions that one of those training camps?
Yes. I don't know where Ricky's getting this from.
I don't either. Because if anything, the players respect Colt because he's found the players that respect him, and they've been playing well these last few weeks.
This is true. I don't know. I think
I don't know how Brian Callahan is soft because, I mean, you saw him just cuss out like you've seen him cuss out refs. You've seen him cuss out Will Levis. I mean, I think from the outside, again, this comes from a point where I'm not there.
Right.
But I've heard stories and reports that this team is not soft. As far as
correct,
those three guys are not soft. Maybe Colt is. I don't think we get a lot of Colt personality reports or anything. But
that's my thing is that nobody knows. Like, we're not privy to the way these guys operate.
Yeah,
we're just not. So I think it is, once again, if that's your angle, you need to find a new angle. Because you're just making stuff. You're guessing.
It's guessing.
It's guesswork.
Okay.
What were we talking about?
I don't know. Well, we're just going to move right along.
Okay.
We're talking about GM head coaches and Chad Brinker.
Right.
It kind of brings you stability, even if you do fire Carthon. But
I had something.
Is that really because because I look at it and I go, is that really going to satisfy? It won't satisfy the talking heads that want everybody gone.
Correct.
It won't satisfy the fans. I think that Rand Carthon deserves another shot. I think, him and Brian Callahan spent the majority of the offseason assembling a staff, so they didn't make it down the Senior Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
They were establishing new things, getting a rhythm. And I think like the whole process itself, from the staff assembling to the play on the field,
Right.
it's taken way too long. I think it's been a very slow progress. You get what I'm saying? It's happening.
Sure.
There's improvement.
Yeah.
But it is way so slow.
Sure.
And I think that in the end, maybe you look at Sheila Ford Hamp and Amy Adams Strunk are good friends.
Mm-hmm.
I think that she views this as a Detroit Lions situation, but I don't think that in year 2 it's going to yield the Detroit Lions results.
I don't know, man. Like I don't know if I'm willing to say that just because it hasn't been a direct correlation, because it all just comes back to who's the quarterback. Because I think it absolutely can yield the Detroit Lions better than the Detroit Lions, because everybody thinks year 2 Detroit Lions were awesome. Incorrect. Like they were far improved from what they were, and they were also a below 500 team. So
Year 2
Lions.
No, 9-8.
9-8. I thought it was 8-9. Okay, so they were at 500. Okay, I had the numbers mixed up.
They started off 1-5.
They still missed the
went on
playoffs,
that
though, right?
Yeah,
that last week they missed the playoffs.
They were
a
eliminated
500
before
team.
that happened, but they almost made it in.
Right, the
Which
day
again,
of.
the Tennessee Titans, with the way they AFC South
That's
looked,
right.
could almost make it in.
The day
next
of
year.
they were eliminated, had nothing to play for against the
and they still went
Packers,
out there
and
and played.
won for no reason.
Yeah.
Right, because it was a very rah-rah Dan Campbell moment. So for all intents and purposes, they were a 500 team that missed the playoffs. My point being, this was not a team that after one season of patience went to being awesome.
Yeah.
They just took a step. I think the Titans are perfectly capable of that, again, depending on who their quarterback is. And they're also perfectly capable of being nowhere close to that. Like, there's just, because with the Lions, we knew who the quarterback was. It was about building around him, building a culture, building a team from what had been a relatively barren roster. With the Titans, it is number one, top of the page. It is the quarterback position. The two things that I was going to say earlier that I just remembered are, number one, if Carthon is actually on the rocks, do we think that decision's already been made? Because surely, if Amy Adams Strunk, I think a lot less of Amy Adams Strunk if she is sitting around this week saying, I just don't know. We'll see how Sunday goes. If this Sunday game, which is a weird circumstance game, is what you are basing whether or not your GM is going to be hired or fired, that's a big yikes for me. I think if he's on the rocks, not to say that the media should already be knowing by any means, but she should already have her mind made up about this. And if she doesn't, there's a no bueno. The other thing that I was going to say is, last year,
if she does have her mind made up and it's firing Rand Carthon,
right?
What are your feelings? You said it's no bueno if she's waiting.
I still disagree with the decision.
Yeah,
but it's way worse a reflection of her own process to me, if that makes sense.
Well, she's notoriously
emotional
rough processes,
especially when it comes to Houston.
Yeah, bad processes.
Right. So that's just, and we'll never really, I don't think we'll ever know that necessarily. We might, but we probably won't. The other thing I was going to say is, so last year she waited until Tuesday to fire Vrabel, which was quite annoying, because it's like when you are on a team that has questions as to whether or not your head coach or your GM is going to survive.
And that was like, you guys weren't even talking, so why'd you even wait that long?
Right. It was like, I'm pretty sure it was like, midday Tuesday or something. And we'd gotten indications like certain players weren't having exit interviews with Vrabel. What's going on? Vrabel didn't speak on Monday. Usually the coach speaks on Monday. It's like what usually happens is on Monday, Tuesday, head coach and GM speak separately. And I forget the order. I think it's head coach, then GM is usually how it goes for teams where they're not getting fired and aren't making the playoffs. So for fans at home that are sitting around wondering, well, when will we know that they're safe or not safe? If they speak on Monday and Tuesday, then they're, talk about a bear situation where you send them out there to speak on Monday. You fire them anyways afterwards.
Yeah.
Don't do that. That is cruel. It's funny, but it's cruel. And it's annoying to us because it really messes with our jobs. So I hope that if she is going to make up her mind about somebody being fired, she does it on Black Monday when you're supposed to do these things. Just get it over with. It also makes me way more likely to think that you were like still noodling on it through that Week 18 game if you're waiting till Tuesday or Wednesday to fire somebody.
Yeah.
And sorry, last
Go
thing.
ahead.
If you fire somebody, don't send the other one out to answer for it.
Yeah, come out yourself.
Please.
I mean,
Come
get in
speak
front
to
of
us
the press
about
co-
it.
Yeah. Get
It's
in
not
front-
hard.
It's not. It's really not.
Don't give if you're speaking to the public about it is another cupcake interview with Mike Keith. I'm going to go full Gentry Estes. I'm going to lose it. Don't do that.
We just need to crowdsource enough money to, buy it ourselves, I guess. Tennessee Titans.
I guess, man. I don't know.
Speaking of Rand Carthon, a lot has been made about his comments in the offseason of we checked every box.
Right.
And I heard the clip this week, and I was like, wait a minute. I didn't pick up on this the 15 times I've heard it over the years, is that he says I looked at the list the offensive staff gave us, and we checked every box. So this kind of goes to our conversation about if you're leaning too much on what they say, not enough on yourself, maybe that is a telltale sign that, you're not doing your job to the best of your ability.
Right.
But what do you think about that comment? Because, everybody has looked at that as a indictment of Rand Carthon, but really that's an indictment of the offensive staff.
Yes. Full transparency. I was distracted from your question by a text from somebody who I will leave unnamed from inside the Titans building. That brings up an interesting question that I'll ask you in a moment. But I need you to repeat the first question you had because it totally caught me off guard.
It was checked all the boxes.
Yes.
And he says the offensive staff, I checked all. I looked at the staff, the list the offensive staff gave us, and I checked all the boxes. And everybody has used that as an indictment of Rand Carthon. He said, I checked all the boxes, and you don't have a right time. Well, he said he checked all the boxes of the offensive staff. So isn't that really an indictment of the offensive staff?
It's fair. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
It really is in hindsight. And everybody kills Rand Carthon for saying it. Listen, maybe he shouldn't fucking say it.
Let's talk through some of the players. Because, again, I think that when you actually do the legwork and go player by player, sometimes you get a different
Well, let's think of what they're asking for.
Right.
So they're asking for a center.
Yep.
Check.
And did a good job on that. Just unfortunate.
Asking for another wide receiver. Check.
Did that.
We got to replace Derrick Henry. Check. And not really like replace Derrick Henry, but you got to find a starting running back.
Right. Did that.
Check.
Need a left tackle.
Left tackle. Check. And then there would be
need a right tackle.
Right tackle.
Yeah.
So who left that off the wish list, and why didn't Rand Carthon add it? That's the real question.
Right. I still do question if we're a little revisionist historying it on the right tackle thing.
I don't think so.
Who was available, Zach? Refresh my memory.
Okay, Jermaine
Illuminor.
You also have the draft, but there's Chris Hubbard was available on a practice squad. You could have brought him over, at any point during this season.
Right.
But they went and traded for Leroy Watson. Is there nobody you could have spent that 6th or 7th round pick, whatever it was?
That's fair.
That's
fair.
I not like Leroy Watson, but you also look at, sticking with NPF was really, to me, sticking with NPF is a mixture of two things. Rand Carthon leaning too much into what Bill Callahan says and not expressing, and maybe he did and nobody cared, which is, again, an indictment of the GM's power. Like, what the fuck are we doing with this NPF guy? I've been here. I've seen him up close. He's not the dude.
Yeah.
We have to be a little bit more aggressive than what we were.
So my initial thinking on that was, well, you had Brian Callahan come in, or Bill Callahan come in here. He's the kind of guy to, think, hey, I can fix this guy. All coaches think they can fix the guy. When you're an awesome coach, you just think it even more.
Right.
But when you look, and I know you did a lot of work on this in the offseason, when you look at like the Bill Callahan type, MPF's not a Bill Callahan type.
Right.
He's not the kind of stereotypical.
But he's also that guy on
if people
film.
are wondering what's a Bill Callahan type, look at the other side of the line.
Yeah.
It's the big MFer on the other side of the line. That's the crazy high play strength. who's maybe not as athletic.
But I also think that Bill Callahan can look at the tape and point at one thing that's like, oh, I just need to fix this one thing. And I think that's kind of what – and sometimes with coaches you have to project and speculate, right? Because you don't know what's the inside the man's heart or inside the man's head on any given player. And so he probably is looking at the film, and I believe it was something that he mentioned earlier a couple weeks ago or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like an anchor situation or something, like dropping his hips or something like that.
Right.
And he's like, well, I can fix that. And then he just couldn't.
Right.
And no offense to Bill Callahan, but he is a guy that has his best offensive line are usually filled with high draft picks in the first or second round. And NPF is not of a high pedigree.
Right.
Which he would not be able to know that full of extent, but that's where Rand Carthon has to kind of say, no, you need a right tackle, dude.
And this conversation just makes me think about, like, my guy, tackle-wise, that was available day 2
Roger Rosengarten.
Was Roger Rosengarten. And, I mean, listen, I get some things in the draft hilariously wrong. I'm not going to sit here and say I always know these things. We all do. Anybody that is honest as draft coverage knows that they're really stupid on some things. Man, watching him this year, playing some good ball for the Ravens. And listen, he went off the board, like number 65 overall? In the 60s, I think.
63, I think.
Okay, 63. T'Vondre Sweat has been, talk about the biggest victory lap ever that you and I, and pretty much it's so funny, just a shameless PSA for those out there listening. If you want to know with draft coverage, I believe this wholeheartedly, who to listen to in the national media, the people that go to the Senior Bowl have a better finger on the pulse of the players at the Senior Bowl than anybody. That's not to say that you are inherently wrong about these guys if you're not there. But there is a reason why with T'Vondre Sweat, who nationally was this very panned player, every single one of us in Nashville that went, you, me, JT, Stoney, Sam, Tehran, everybody in town that went and did the Senior Bowl thing and sat there up close and watched him against his peers, his very good, highly drafted peers. All of us came back.
And why he was fat.
Right. All of us. That's right. All of us came back and said, I don't know what people were talking about. This guy's going to be a good player.
Yeah.
So just a Senior Bowl plug.
You know who went to the Senior Bowl? Chad Brinker.
He did. I saw him
who did
with my own eyes.
Senior Bowl?
Rand Carthon. And Brian Callahan, for that record. I think they're both going to be there this year.
Yeah.
I think. We'll see.
And maybe Rand Carthon with another team. We don't know. All right. What's your question that you...
Oh, yeah. So this topic brought up to me via text. Can we talk a little bit about... Can we do a little bit about the Titans draft position?
Yes.
Okay. And not necessarily about where they'll land, because we know the situation, whether they win or they lose. But there's been a lot of talk in anticipation of our draft discussion, the Titans being high enough to be in the quarterback discussion, as to whether or not this should be a season where they buck the temptation to take a quarterback just because you're at number 1 or number 2, because of the strength of this quarterback class, because of the strength of next year's quarterback class, and because of where your roster is. There's no Pro Bowlers on this team. You got a lot more issues besides just quarterback, right? And there's some usual suspects on the internet who are making these points. A point brought up to me just now is something that should be obvious, but apparently it's not.
Okay.
And I know, like, I'm going to say it, and we're going to be like, yes, of course. So I can't believe we have to explain this. But apparently we do, because so many people don't get this. I get the general desire in the NFL to want to bring in especially if it's a rookie, your new quarterback, into a favorable situation, a situation set up for them to succeed. And so the idea, maybe don't put the cart before the horse, build up your roster until you're in a place where you feel like you got a nest suitable to raise this young hatchling quarterback. But when that's all nice on paper. It's great.
Yeah.
But when you do that and you get a good team besides the quarterback, what makes you think you're in position to go get Arch Manning? What makes you think you're in position to go get Garrett Nussmeier, Drew Allen, who's probably going to be high draft picks?
And, a couple days ago I told you is like, well,
you made a great point on this.
I said, okay, so think about it like this. You let's say you get Derek Carr, regardless. I'm like, if I had to bet more, I'd bet more money that Derek Carr is the quarterback than Rand Carthon got fired.
Same.
Okay. So that's just where I'm at right now. I think Derek Carr will be the quarterback at 2025. I'd be very surprised just because of how the quarterback market's probably going to go. He's probably going to get cut, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
If you go ahead and take the quarterback at 2,
Right.
okay, and you have Derek Carr, because you have to have a quarterback. You can't go in with no quarterbacks.
Right.
Or Will Levis as your only quarterback on the roster, right?
Especially if you're a 2 and you aren't sure of who. I mean,
Exactly.
you think you know.
So you have to get a free agent quarterback. When you go through it and you start thinking, okay, well, Derek Carr is probably good enough, and let's say Shadur's gone, and then you end up getting Abdul Carter, right? So you got Carr, Abdul Carter, then you got the other people that you have signed and drafted. This team is going to be better. And then let's say you get to 7 or 8 wins. Well, you're going to spend more draft capital to have to go up to get the quarterback you have conviction in, just because Drew Aller and Garrett Nussmeier and Cade Klubnik are up there. Well, not all 3 you're going to have conviction about.
Right.
You're not just going to be like, well, I'm good with all 3.
You're not even mentioning Arch because you're assuming.
Well, Arch is going to be, I think, in 2027.
So do
Nico,
I, actually.
maybe in 2026.
So do I, actually.
Maybe Nico.
Every time I say that, people
Lenore
shout me down.
Sellers could be another one. But, like, you look at me and you're thinking, well, how often, first off, are you going to have conviction about all 4 of them or all 3? And then you're going to have to trade more draft capital, including future draft capital, to get one of those guys more than likely.
Correct.
So,
and that's
to
if they take your call.
Yeah.
I mean, because a lot of these times.
And what if they go back to school?
Was Chicago taking calls on the Caleb pick last year? No. They said, hello, how can I help you? And they're like, about number 1. Click. We're not talking to you.
And if you look at it, you think about it and you go, okay, what if they stay? I mean, Drew Aller could technically still go back.
Sure could.
Even
and
after
Klubnik,
next year.
right?
Klubnik, too. I mean, it's
and
not.
Nussmeier.
And Nussmeier. I'm just saying that you can't. It's a tricky game to play. It's a big gamble.
Yes.
To act like that, oh, okay, well, if the Abdul Carter, I'm a big Abdul Carter guy. So, again, if you have Derek Carr, Abdul Carter, and let's say you get a right tackle in the second round, and maybe you even land Jedrick Wills, too. Well, you've solved quarterback and your right tackle situation, and those are the only 2 new pieces.
And edge, by the way.
And those are the only 3 new pieces that have already been here.
Zach, what did I tell you last week that I've been saying all year? Is this team has average quarterback, tackle, and edge play away.
So if you do that,
you know what I mean? Like, so
you're probably, especially in this division, are going to be out of the running for one of the top quarterbacks.
And the way that you phrased it to me the other day, I don't think you said this already, but the way that you said you have to kind of judge this year's quarterback 1 and 2, not against quarterback 1 and 2 next year or last year, but against quarterback
3 and 4,
3, 4, 5, 6, because of where you're likely to be, unless you are going to sell the farm to move up to get that guy, and even then, you can't. Like I have a lot of pet peeves. One of my biggest pet peeves about the draft is the way that people talk about it, in the sense that you can just do things, you can decide to do things. I understand you're taking a shortcut verbally to have a conversation. But the way that some people talk about it, they act like it's just this given, that it is so not. Whether they're talking about
nothing is given in the NFL.
Well, no, but in the draft in particular, the draft, everything about the draft is a two-way street. Unless you stick and pick, everything you do, if you move up, you move down, it requires a dance partner, man. So people talk about, just if you're at whatever pick, just move down. With who? What? You don't want the pick. What makes you think somebody else is going to want the pick? Oh, well, if the Titans, they can get better next year, and then if they really love Arch Manning,
especially in a quote-unquote bad quarterback class.
Send three firsts to get back up there. Why are you assuming that they're going to say yes to that? Like, teams just make up their minds sometimes. The other teams beat out the offer. Sometimes you can't even possibly make a better offer than another team because they have more draft capital than you. Like, it is so... these assumptions are what get people fired. You can't make these assumptions. And so I think between the point that you made and the point that the person that texted me made, it is dangerous to plan. It is great in theory to say we've got to not put the cart before the horse and plan this team around the incoming quarterback.
That's also a bullshit.
How many times can we think of where a team intentionally, not because people luck into it, it happens, but intentionally built a team where they're like, everybody thought this team needs a quarterback, and then they kind of zig, and we're all like, wow, they're really just trying to build this team, and then they eventually get the quarterback, and it works out that way.
I mean, look at the Bears. They did everything
They
right.
tried this.
They did everything right.
They forgot offensive line matters.
Yeah.
Right.
In the same year that they draft Caleb Williams, they brought in $13 billion worth of offensive weaponry.
Yes.
They used a second pick on the draft on Rome Odunze.
Mm-hmm.
They tried, and it failed.
Yes.
And that's not to say it can't get better next year. I don't think Ben Johnson's the answer. I'll go on a limb and say that. If I was the Bears, I'd be getting Cliff Kingsbury for Caleb Williams. But that's just me. Scheme fit matters. And if you know, and my big thing is fit and conviction. If you are convicted in your belief that Shedeur Sanders is the guy that fits this system, you have to draft him. You have to. This idea that has to be a perfect situation, you know what the perfect situation is for Shedeur Sanders? Is that he is drafted here. You don't spend any extra draft capital to go after for another quarterback future. So you get to keep your draft assets and keep building through the draft your roster to support Shedeur Sanders while he could sit on the bench with a vet.
Yeah.
That is the best.
Yeah.
And not a vet, and listen, not a vet like Trevor Siemian, who's apparently the only mentor for Will Levis that he can talk to.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I look at it and I go, if this is the guy, you got to draft him. You can't waste that conviction and say, well, maybe I'll be convicted more by one of these guys. Because you know how many times we have heard that Spencer Rattler is a great example. You know how many times that the year that Trevor Lawrence was coming out,
Carson Beck,
2022 was
QB1 in this class before this season began.
Right. 2022 draft class was supposed to be Spencer Rattler QB1 year, and it flamed out. That can happen to a Garrett Nussmeier or Drew Aller or someone like that.
God forbid, because it is NFL clergy at this point. It's religious fervor.
Yeah, so
Arch Manning could be bad at football.
he could get injured.
He could be bad. He could get hurt.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things that can happen in a college season, but I remember the Spencer Rattler and the way too early big boards. Can't miss prospect Spencer Rattler.
I wish he could already come out this year because this guy would be
He would be the second quarterback off the board. And
Right.
look at him. He ended up going to the 5th round of the Saints.
Right. And that's why Jeremiah Smith is going to be a bust.
Yeah, that's why I know Stoney's going to be mad about our Spencer Rattler hate. But,
JT is going to be – the agenda is down bad.
Yeah, Sam Howell was the prince that was promised, after Spencer Rattler. Yep. I mean, to me, it's all about conviction. And listen, your conviction can be wrong.
Yes.
They could be totally wrong about Shedeur Sanders and the things that they can work on him with. They could, maybe the time to throw is a real issue.
Right.
That's not tied to – because, every time to throw has a different story. He's keeping his eyes down the field trying to make a play behind a bad offensive line. He has enough athleticism to escape the pocket and do plays, but he's trying to make plays with his arm. Now,
that's why you need to marry evaluating time to throw to pressure rate to pressure to sack rate. And
then you also got to remember that, and I think Kurt Warner said it, he said that you got to think what goes into your time to throw too is how many of your progressions are you getting to? What are you reading the defense and stuff like that? That all goes in your time to throw too. But you know what? His time to throw is only a 1/10 of a second higher than Cam Ward. So what are we even doing here for all the Shedeur Sanders hater? The same thing. It's all about fit.
Yes.
And I think we both agree.
Truly, your time to throw really only matters if your pressure to sack is super high. Or your sack rate or your pressure rate.
And listen, the people that say that, well, you have to start him if you draft him number 2, there's a difference between want and have to.
Yeah,
I can understand if you're a fan and you say, hey, we drafted Shedeur Sanders number 2. I'd like to see him start.
For sure.
And maybe he wins the job, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing precluding him from winning the job.
Sure.
But this draft class of quarterbacks, I've maintained probably, this is my take halfway through this season. It's man, this is a great draft class to draft someone and have them sit and develop and do it right. Because the NFL, what we have learned this year, if there's one thing everybody should have taken away from the quarterback's situation across the league, is that development isn't linear, and not everybody is going to go into the same situation. Let's think about it. Caleb Williams was handed the reins. We saw how that ended up.
Mm-hmm.
He probably could have benefited from sitting behind someone to
For
get to
sure.
the speed of the game. J.J. McCarthy. Sam Darnold was going to get that job regardless. He was the starter over J.J. McCarthy. They were point blank about it. And guess
Wait,
what?
is that true?
Yeah.
That Darnold was going to be
Yep.
I thought that it was a real question.
No,
Are you sure
no,
about that?
I'm 100% sure.
Okay.
And because they named him the starter fairly early, they said he was going to start, and it's going to be about a couple. I mean, a lot of people thought that maybe it'd be an 8-week thing,
Right.
but Sam Darnold was named the starter.
Okay.
And guess what? He would have kept that job. They wouldn't have started J.J. McCarthy.
Sure.
Drake May sat behind Jacoby Brissett.
Mm-hmm.
And then Bo Nix beat out Jarrett Stidham. Jaden Daniels beat out Marcus Mariota.
Marcus.
Not two, great quarterbacks, but they were in legit quarterback competitions.
Right.
The only person that wasn't in a quarterback competition
Was Caleb.
was Caleb Williams.
Right.
That should tell us something, right?
Who even is their backup?
Tyson Badgett.
Bajan. Yeah, that's right. Bajan. Yeah.
Yeah.
That wasn't a quarterback. Yeah. I mean, so you can put it really simply, right? No quarterback's career has ever been harmed by sitting.
Right.
Plenty of quarterbacks' careers have been harmed by not sitting.
Right.
So
What's the
only,
harm?
The only downside is if you're in a situation as a team where you have your bridge guy, your other guy, is somebody that is so good that you're worried you're going to have a Minnesota situation. But I'm going to bookmark that. Let's come back to the Minnesota situation here in a second because I have some thoughts. Or the other thing you get yourself trouble with is the Justin Fields, Andy Dalton situation, where your team is either so incompetent and or so lacking the courage of their convictions that they're not willing to pick a time to make the switch, be intentional about when to make the switch, and be done. Make the switch. Yeah. And because if they're going to flip-flop back and forth and you got the whole 2 quarterbacks equals no quarterbacks thing, then yeah, you're also screwed in that situation. But barring those 2 things, it is a good thing. It is a good thing. And so to come back to the Minnesota situation where we say it's a bad thing because, well, what if the other guy's just awesome?
That's still a good problem
It's
to have.
a great problem. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
So Minnesota this year, we're hearing about how can they really pay Sam Darnold with the J.J. McCarthy?
And you think the fans are really saying, well, man, I really miss J.J. McCarthy as their team sits atop 14-2 and playing for the number 1 seed.
Right. You're
and I'm not
awesome.
saying that's going to happen with like Derek Carr or anything, but like.
Right. Well, then all the talk in the media is about how, like, so which one do they get rid of? Sam Darnold. Got to get rid of one of them. Who do you pick? Says who?
Keep them both.
Says who? You're rich.
Yeah.
You're rich
you
at the
are
most.
Quarterback rich.
You are rich at the most valuable position. I mean, you've struck oil. You are rich at the most valuable position in the entire sport. Why in hell would you move on from one of them? If not for there's always, somebody comes and offers you, the Titans offer you the 2nd overall pick for McCarthy. 10 spots.
You're crazy to take him.
I think you're less crazy because you are literally getting a better pick in return than what you spent on him.
Right, but I mean, like, you don't. Where's your backup quarterback?
Even then, I personally still say no. I'm with you.
Yeah.
But my point is, unless you are getting better than what you spent on him, you are insane to move on. Unless I guess maybe internally, if you just like secretly you're like, guys, we kind of know this guy sucks. Like nobody else knows it yet, but we know it. Barring that, I don't think that's the case. You're crazy to move off of him, and you have the opportunity to, because here's the other thing. One of them's free. Like, it's not like, oh, you can't pay both guys. Yes, you can. One of them is free to you. What are we talking about? Sam Darnold's going to cost a lot of money. This is the argument you hear. Oh, Sam Darnold, he's going to cost so much money. They could spend that money on a couple other pieces to get him over the hump. What hump? They're 14-2.
Yeah.
Their roster is awesome. Where's the glaring hole on this roster?
Right.
I don't know.
Running back. Big whoop.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
most affordable
Yeah, big
position
whoop.
on the free agent market every
Right.
year, where you can find Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry and Tony Pollard just for couch cushion money.
Right.
It's crazy. Like, if this was a team that wasn't 14-2, that was, I'm trying to think, like a team that's close but has a couple real flaws. I don't know. Green Bay is what came to mind, but they're also pretty freaking good. I don't know. Pick your flavor. Whatever team where you're like, oh, they're this away from being a real contender. Maybe some people consider the Lions that, where they're a defensive player away, whatever you may think. okay, we can have a conversation. I still think it's crazy because, again, there is no
Cam Scatabo
in the fourth
in the
round.
Vikings first round at
Right.
the end.
Oh, yeah, in the first
There you
round?
go.
I like that.
Fixes the running back problem.
Yeah, and that'd be
And
exciting.
then you got all this money to spend whatever you want.
Exactly. I guess just my rant to come to a conclusion. I think I think pretty highly of the coaching staff and the front office up there.
Yeah.
I think KOC and Quest Mensa are really good at what they do. I think they both are laughing at every headline along these lines that comes across their desks because I think they've got diamond fists on both of these guys. And, the one thing I haven't really mentioned is, if you've got a situation where somebody's pissy about it and can't handle it, then maybe it's a thing where they force your hand and it's a bad teammate kind of thing. Fine. We're talking about Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy. I mean, it's as good a situation as you can get.
What if, let's say they let Sam Darnold go because J.J. McCarthy throws a little hissy fit. Not to say they would, but let's say he does.
Okay.
And then J.J. McCarthy gets injured in training camp.
Right.
And it's Daniel Jones.
Right.
Whew. You went from the best quarterback
idiots.
situation to the worst quarterback
fold
situation.
the franchise. Fireable offense.
Yeah.
Fireable offense.
That would be crazy.
That's the other thing is like if you told me, if you were a time traveler and said, "Oh, they only do keep one of these guys, who's it going to be?" It's definitely Darnold because if they move off of McCarthy this year, they are getting something significant in return. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just a second round pick or whatever it is. But you are getting something of significant value in return. You're not he's not a free agent. He's under contract. With Darnold, if they move off of him, you get nothing.
You may get a compensatory pick depending on which.
Okay, cool.
That's about it.
Yeah, right. Oh, you get a really nice late third round pick at best. So I just think there's no. I mean, there's already the think pieces. Our friend James Foster wrote about over at the 33rd team wrote about how Darnold is their franchise quarterback in Minnesota, and he's right. And anybody that I think has watched them play understands. Oh, because there's been a lot of Darnold haters this year that have not bought it, still not buying it, still think that and this is the crazy thing.
A lot of non-ball knowers.
A lot of non-ball knowers, but still to this day would tell you if he hit the free agent market, which is not going to, but if he did, they'd say, I think they'd be crazy, the Titans or whoever needs a quarterback to sign this guy. It's a fluke. It's a flash in the pan. You're signing up for you're gonna. It's Nick Foles for $50 million in Jacksonville. Wrong. Incorrect. What he's doing is epic and replicable and sustainable. And he has played such good football this year that if he were to go somewhere else, again, he's not going to, but if he were, I think that the result of wherever he went, however it went at the place that he went, would, to me, be more a reflection of that situation and that coaching staff than of Sam Darnold. Like I think he has arrived. I think that he's a certified good quarterback.
Sometimes it just takes a perfect fit for the quarterback to realize who they are and what they are. I mean, you saw it with Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield.
It's the most underrated part of all of football, man. And in the draft cycle in particular, we talk about every
that was my big thing about Justin
angle.
Fields going to the Bears is I think Justin Fields is a good quarterback, but that's not the place for him to go.
Right. We talk we spend 4 months covering every square foot of the angles possible on the draft. But we spend probably the least amount of time on talking about fit because it is a difficult thing to pin down, and you have to have an intimate understanding of a team, where they're at, the personnel that they like. Like there's a high knowledge threshold to be able to have that conversation, but it is the most under-discussed thing because I think fit is maybe not the most important thing in the draft, but it's maybe the second most important thing in the draft. Well, it's a huge deal.
Well, that's we were having a discussion today. It was who has the best traits. Is Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward better athletically and better armed than Will Levis?
Because of the Charles Robinson thing?
Yeah. On Robbie and Rex Road. And Blaine brought it up, and I was like, well, there's a different conversation to be had. Who's the best for the Titans?
Right.
Because that's the conversation we're having where we cover the Tennessee Titans.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if Cam Ward is better than Shedeur Sanders if he were to go to Kansas City, for example. Tennessee Titans got to find their quarterback, and the guy that fits this quarterback better than any of the three out of those three names. And by the way, I'm taking Cam Ward over Will Levis too. Is Shedeur Sanders, no doubt,
mm-hmm.
and he fits like a glove. So I always think that fit is pretty important. And this is if there's the Brian Callahan offense. If let's say Brian Callahan gets fired, and for whatever weird reason, Brian Daboll ends up here.
Oh,
I'm going Cam Ward.
Sure. Yes.
Okay,
Fair.
so I mean that's the better fit.
Right.
And to me, that's how you got to look at. Like some people surpass fit. Travis Hunter surpasses fit.
Yep.
Abdul
Universal
Carter,
fit.
yeah,
One
Abdul
size fits
Carter
all.
surpasses fit.
Yep.
Joe Alt surpassed fit, in
Mhm.
my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, obviously wide receivers for the most part surpass fit. So, like, to me, it's whoever fits for this team. So that's where you got to go. You got to do whatever is best for this team right now. Not what may happen, not banking on some alternate timeline,
Right.
because that alternate timeline may never happen.
Yes.
That's just where you got to be.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said, actually, except for that last part where you said wide receivers surpass fit. I don't think that's true either.
There's some
Some people that want this team to draft Ted McMillan.
Well,
I don't think he's a terrible fit for this team.
Well, there's like wide receivers. It's got to be based on what you have open.
What you have available, right?
Right.
It's
But
less
like,
fit,
for the
more
most part,
openings.
there's no like, well, this wide receiver can only fit this kind of scheme.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to
That's
talk
fair. That's fair.
about. So here's my bold, spicy prediction.
Okay.
So
About what?
So I'm gonna tell you.
Okay.
The other day, Deion Sanders tweeted out talking about Lewis Reddick
Saw that.
and talking about how he needs to be a GM, talking about blah 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 blah. Just giving him all this praise.
I have a Lewis Reddick question in a minute, but go on.
Okay, he interviewed for the Jets today.
Right.
The Jets need a head coach. Deion Sanders, Lewis Reddick, 2025, and then they trade up with New England Patriots to get Shadur Sanders. That's my take.
Yeah.
That's my spicy take.
I mean, so here's the thing.
Bold prediction. Super bold. Likely not going to happen.
Well, here's the thing that I think is the least likely thing to happen in that entire scenario is Lewis Reddick getting the job. Because maybe this makes me just say, like, I have literally nothing against Lewis Reddick. I'm just reading the tea leaves here.
Yeah.
I'm in the booth. I really
Well, the
like
Jets
Lewis.
are just really bored right now.
I know, but
Just by the way, because they don't have anything
But every
to do.
year we do this,
Yeah.
right? Every year. Lewis Reddick in the GM game right now is Eric Bieniemy in the coaching game
Yeah.
to me. Like, at what point are we going to jump the shark on Lewis Reddick, the GM, and decide? Because Eric Bieniemy, not to turn political podcast, but like for the longest time, he was the poster child for the black coaches don't get a fair shake in the NFL. And while to me that always felt like good cause, terrible champion, because it felt obvious to me that like I kind of think this guy just doesn't have it based on all these interviews he's getting and it's not working. And now years later we see this guy's getting fired from UCLA and it's like,
Well, then Eric Bieniemy. You're talking about Eric Bieniemy.
Eric Bieniemy, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was like, well, yeah, so maybe you picked the wrong champion for a noble cause. I'm not saying Lewis Reddick would suck as a GM. I'm just saying how many times are we going to do this where the ESPN analyst is going to interview for the GM job year after year? We're going to do the whole Lewis Reddick would make a really good GM. Maybe he would. I'm not saying he wouldn't. But clearly all these teams don't necessarily think so.
But also 33rd team. I mean, they're getting paid. They're collecting this big ass paycheck, and they're like, "Well, I'm sure the Jets were like, hey, you guys going to do something? Poke the stick."
If James wills it, Lewis Reddick will be a
there you go.
NFL GM.
James Foster is secretly puppeteering the Jets.
That's
right now. But it's just funny.
world.
They hired the 33rd team, and then you don't hear anything for a while after we all made fun of them. And then you don't hear anything after a while. And then now they're interviewing all these, never haves and has-beens.
Well, the funniest thing about it is how, like, the people on the 33rd team that actually made up their advisory
What are
council.
they waiting for with Mike Vrabel?
What?
I thought, Mike Vrabel's free to interview, and we haven't really heard anything.
Right, exactly. The people that are on the 33rd team's advisory council for that Jets job, one of them is
Mike Tannenbaum.
Tannenbaum, the former Jets GM.
Yeah.
What a crazy, weird. Imagine I guess running your new girlfriend by your ex-girlfriend to see if they approve, but you broke up with your ex-girlfriend on like unhappy terms and expecting them to give you good
He's
advice.
just going to be GM.
Tannenbaum.
Yeah.
After a thorough search, I have determined
They
I am
interviewed
the
John
best.
Robinson.
I
they
am the
were just
best
so
candidate.
fucking bored up in New York,
New
apparently.
Jersey.
Okay. Titans, are they going to lose this Sunday?
Yes.
Are you sure?
No. Here's what I'm sure of. I say sure. This is as sure as you can be of a guess. I don't want to come off as like I've got any sourcing on this.
Right.
I am sure in my gut that they are going to do everything in their power to lose the game. I am sure that they understand the gravity of the situation and what the assignment here is. I am sure that if possible, they will lose. I am also sure of their ability to screw it up and the Texans to screw them over if they so choose. So I am still nervous. Like it's one of those things that feels so, sometimes things in life are just a slam dunk and they're so a slam dunk that you get nervous about them because you're like, when's their shoe going to drop? That's how I feel about this game.
Will Levis be on this team in 2025? Okay.
Define 2020. Define 2025.
Will he be on this team by the time the offseason program starts for the Tennessee Titans?
Oh, that's not what I wanted you to define. I was gonna say, because
it's obviously already 2025, so he's definitely on the team.
Well, true.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. Is I think there's a decent chance like he's on the team for a while, but not until after the draft, or maybe even not until the end of middle of or the end of training camp.
Okay, so I mean, you then think that he's probably on this team at the beginning of off-season program. If you think it's going to be
probably,
yeah,
I'd say it's unlikely he's still on the team by June.
Is Shedeur Sanders going to be the Tennessee Titans draft pick right now? What's your gut feeling telling you?
Strong, yes.
Strong, yes. If you can't get Shedeur Sanders, you want
to die. I want. Oh, so I don't have to draft somebody. I could get somebody. Oh,
you can get Drew Aller, no. I'm sorry. You can get Abdul Carter if you want. I mean,
no. But are you saying I have to draft a?
You have to draft somebody.
I thought you meant.
No, he doesn't have to be a quarterback.
I thought you were asking about who I want the Titans quarterback to be, not who you're asking. Who their first
Shedeur
draft
Sanders
pick
is not there.
If Shedeur is not there to draft,
yeah,
is Travis Hunter available?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
If he's not there, he obviously would be.
Well, this brings up the thing that we were talking about last week.
So who do you want?
I want Abdul.
Okay.
But I feel like a moron letting Travis. I'm praying to God somebody already took Travis.
The offensive tackle that nobody's talking about that they should be talking about.
You know what? I'm gonna be honest on this one.
Okay.
I don't feel like I have literally just started to familiarize myself with the tackles. Here's what I will say. And I will refer anybody that does want the answer to our friend Stoney Keeley, who definitely has been familiar with them. I will say the thing we're not talking about most about tackles is something that you and I have been talking about, where this is a very typical situation of a lot of the tackles in this class are not tackles, and for an unspecified amount of time this spring, we're going to be talking about them as LSU tackle so-and-so
Will Skoronsky.
Will Skoronsky. What's his actual last name?
Campbell.
Yeah, Will Skoronsky, very good offensive lineman, probably I would say the best lineman in this class from what I've heard. Not a tackle. He's not the only one that's like that, by the way. There's a handful of guys in this class that are kind of
Okay, so
just saying, make sure you know whether a guy's a tackle or not before you do your PFF mock draft and post it and say, I fixed the tackle position in the first round.
Yes or no?
No, you didn't.
Yes or no? These guys will be here they'll survive the firings. Okay. Brian Callahan.
Yes.
Rand Carthon.
Yes.
Chad Brinker.
Yes.
Colt Anderson.
No.
Oh, man. Rest in peace, Colt.
Denard
Wilson.
You know what, though? For your sake, I hope that he survives just so that we can talk about it. Yeah.
Denard Wilson.
Yes.
Okay. Nick Holtz.
Yes.
Anthony Robinson. Anthony Levine. Sorry. Or maybe Anthony Robinson, too.
No, not Robinson, but Levine. I'll say sacrificial lamb on Levine.
Chris Harris. Okay, no.
I don't think so.
Remember, we're also an audio podcast, so you're going to have to say yes or no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really new to podcasting.
Steven Jackson.
Yes.
Frank Bush.
I'll say no.
Oh, interesting. That's an interesting one.
Nobody really cares, but we've had some talks in the media room about what is it exactly you do around here.
Well, he coaches the linebackers.
I know what his title is.
You don't think he's coaching the linebackers?
I think his reputation preceded him coming in and was maybe
Was I right the whole time about Frank Bush?
was a little oversold, maybe? I don't know. Maybe, maybe these linebackers.
I tried to tell people that name me a linebacker that Frank Bush has developed, and nobody can.
That's my point. Not that he's done a terrible job with the linebackers this year on the team.
I heard he's a good teacher, but
yes,
that doesn't necessarily mean you're a good coach. Tracy Rocker.
Yes.
Okay.
I think Tracy's done a really good job.
What about my boy Ben Powers?
Ben Powers.
Is that his name?
What position coach?
What's that? Ben Bloom.
Bloom. Oh, it's like Ben Powers. I think he will be, but I wouldn't mind if he wasn't. No offense to him.
Man,
what's he done? What's he done? Listen, because I'm inclined to just bring most of the staff back personally.
Yeah.
But if they feel like they have to fire some people, he's at the top of the list for me.
Oh, man, rest in peace, Ben Bloom. Bill Callahan.
Imagine.
Yeah. Bo Hardigree.
No, hang on. Can you imagine? He's like, you know what?
We're trying to wrap this up.
We're laying down the law. He fires his dad.
Yeah.
Oh.
What if his dad retires?
It'd be bad for the team.
Okay, Bo Hardigree. Stay, go. Tyke Tolbert.
Back.
Randy Jordan.
Back.
What about, did I say Nick Colts?
Yes, back.
And Justin Otten. I wonder if he gets hired, though, by someone else.
He could.
Yeah.
He could.
Ricky he's like, why would you keep Holtz? Players don't respect him. No basis for this. There's no basis.
Maybe Ricky is a player, and he's trying to send us smoke signals about.
You think he?
Which player would be Ricky?
Who do you think Ricky W is? Trevor Siemian?
Was to be an offensive player, right? Jaquan Jackson.
He's Jaquan Jackson.
Yep.
Your boy.
Yep.
Speaking of Senior Bowl coming up.
Shout out Jaquan if you're watching.
Shout out Jaquan who makes you shoot hoops and you miss, I guess, apparently, or whatever.
Less than JT does.
Less than JT. Well, but JT can ride a bike, so he's got you there. That'll do it for us at Football and Other F Words.
I can ride a bike.
Follow me on Twitter at @TheZachLions. Oh, Traylon Burks. That's who Ricky W is. Great job there.
Apparently, there was a sighting of him in the locker room today. I missed it.
Yeah, compare Ohio State's assistant coaches, Titans assistant coach. I couldn't name you one fucking Ohio State. I don't even know who their defensive coordinator is.
I know
Ryan Day.
I know Ryan Day.
Oh, Chip Kelly is their offensive coordinator.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Couldn't
say that, DC. No idea.
Yeah.
Who do they?
I don't know. I don't even know what that means.
Who does this person think we are? I know we come off as these all-knowing arbiters of football.
College coaches are like high school recruits.
There are limits even to our knowledge.
But I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. Like, what does that mean?
What's that in reference to?
How does that mean that Nick Colts is not, that players don't respect him?
Oh, this is about Ricky?
Yeah, this is still Traylon Burks.
Maybe this is a Ohio State coach wanting to get his resume in.
Maybe he is.
Which I respect. Shoot your shot, Ricky.
There you go. Okay, what were you doing?
Trying to leave, probably.
Yeah. Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop, Zach Lyons, 1 of 3 weekdays. We got Titans Talk Back, last Titans Talk Back of the year.
Thank God.
Yes. This Sunday after the game. We'll be there through 6:30. And then Ricky goes, I'm not surprised you don't know jack shit about you. I'm sorry I don't know the defensive line or the linebackers coach of Ohio State for your weird fucking point that makes no sense, Traylon Burks. And then we got Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports. Tell the people where they could do your stuff.
A2ZSports.com. Search Easton or the Titans or the draft. I wrote today about how it'd be really cool if Drew Aller changed his mind about coming out in the 2025 class.
Why would that be cool?
Well, selfishly for us.
Do you hate him? Do you not want him to get better?
Well, listen, I think all of these quarterbacks could go back and get better. Some of them who have declared, some today, are your boy, Milrow, declaring that. You saw this?
Yeah. I mean, he's an idiot. Yeah. But I guess it's better to be an idiot. I guess it's better to be the 4th best quarterback in a bad quarterback class than the 10th best quarterback in a good quarterback class.
I guess, but the Milrow running back discourse is going to be fun.
Oh, yeah.
Because we'll be having it. Ain't nobody going to talk about him as a quarterback.
I'm not talking about Jalen Milrow anymore.
At all? You're stunned.
Fuck him. He ain't on the Titans radar. I can tell you. Talk about
what if he's at the combine as a running back, though?
Not that would be interesting.
Listen, that's what I'm hoping happens.
It probably won't.
He won't.
No. Jackson, you got anything left for us before we get out here?
Show rating tonight about a B+, boys. Good job.
Thank you. B+ show rating, so there we go. That will do it for us. This has been Football and Other F Words, and you have just been effed.